0, 1. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Top 10 Tennis. My name is Dr. Ashley Morgan-Berge and I am your host. Welcome to episode 98 of Beyond Top 10 Tennis. I can't believe how far we've come and how close we are to 100, which will, I guess, unfold over the next week, given that Wimbledon is less than a week away, which is incredibly exciting. Look, for those of you who have been with us for some time now, thank you so much. You know what we're all about, diving into the latest rankings and results on the WTA and ATP tour, while sharing those key data insights, respective implications from my body of work. If you are new, thank you so much for joining us. I really would encourage you to track back to our earlier episodes from around the beginning through to say episode 50. That really touched on one of my earlier releases, The Secrets to Optimal Performance Success, before, say, around episode 70, we made that transition to really dive into as live as we can get, essentially, on weekly rankings and the performances of respective players during that week. And it was the French Open only a few weeks ago now where we started to introduce the live feed as well. So you could be listening to audio only or our new video feed. So hi, and it's been a lot of fun and I hope you've been enjoying it as well. But of course, if you're new, feedback's always welcome. Also, I guess, to learn more about me, if you are new and you're unfamiliar of Beyond Top 10 Tennis or myself or my body of work, my latest release, How to Develop a Top 10 Tennis Ranking. It's a couple of months old now, but oh my goodness, look, the power of the eighth key, it is absolutely fundamental. You'll see at the top there from the world's leading scientist, that's me, the world's leading scientist and coach behind how to develop a top 10 tennis ranking. Really exciting, but to, I think, understand my background from that coaching standpoint, the players I've worked with, all the books that I've published. There's 12 now specifically to date. It's absolutely incredible and I'm so proud of the work that we've been able to deliver. The 7 keys, you'll hear me touch on that, I think, countless times, previous episodes and most probably today's episode as well. In conjunction with this one, the 8th key, really powerful work here, and my sole fictional release that brings it up to 12. So there's really 11 specific texts in there that are really non-fiction centerpieces that guide you towards that top 10 tennis ranking. We've touched on in the past around Grand Slam success. Really exciting that Paris is around the corner, because I did touch on it briefly in this one, that there are actual Olympic implications, correlations with those podium finishes. Gold, silver, bronze. Okay, we started a little bit of a different format last episode, and I really want to carry through with that. Rather than diving into the rankings and then the results, I want to keep, I think, that the backflip going, where we're looking at the results, so the events that have unfolded over the past week and the ones that are starting this week as well, before diving into those rankings. That way we can really pull on the results and why we've got those ranking movers, and to better extrapolate that and kind of leave it hidden until we've uncovered and discussed those key insights. There are a few significant tournaments this week, really big ones that have unfolded. We've had some very interesting movers in the rankings. So let's dive in. We're going to start on the WTA Tour, before then switching to the ATP Tour as always. So I guess we've been doing that now for some time to really, I think, wrap off one side of the tour and then complete the other respectively. So let's dive in. Okay, first off, we've got Birmingham. It just wrapped up over on the weekend, and I really want to share, I think, some key wins, losses, etc. that have happened along the way, because obviously, again, those ranking implications. So look, we've got Fernandez, Sorobes, Tormo, round of 32, 1-1 to Fernandez. Really good win for her. She is a ranking mover. Gulbik over Osorio, 3 sets. Tomljanovic over Blinkova, a really good win, 2-1, round of 32 still. Stay, the 3rd seed, fell to Zhu in straight sets. Potapova over Evanesyan, 4-4. Ostapenko was the number 1 seed. She fell to Kokureto, 3-3. Noteworthy is Kokureto has been on the move of late, so this is not that surprising if you've been following the data, the metrics, and I guess tuning into Beyond Top 10 Tennis. Stevens over Yuan, straight sets. And then we've got Bronzetti over Fresh in 3 sets. Okay, still wrapping up 32. We've had Balta and Kalinina. Balta retired in that first set, so Kalinina took that 6-3. Putintseva over Burel, 4-4. Pliskova had a really good week last week. She fell to Dohide in 3 sets. 3rd set was a tie break, and that was 7-5. Schneider, really good win over Richkeki, 5-3. Watson fell to Buskova in 3 sets. Dart is on a run here over Ushimama in straight sets, 3-3. Wozniacki fell to Mertens, 5th seed, 4-1. Krejcikova, good win over Saville, 6-1, 7-6. All right, that wraps up the round of 32. Round of 16, we had Potapova over Bronzetti, 3-5. Tomljanovic over Zhu in 3 sets, 6-7, 6-1, 6-4. Now remember, Tomljanovic has been sidelined for some time now, I think almost a good 18 months. She had that stellar performance at the US Open a few seasons ago now, where she took Serena Williams out on her final match. But before that, she's also had some good wins across the surfaces. Grass, she has had some really good wins previously as well. I believe she was at a rankings high around just inside the top 40 at her peak. She has obviously dealt with a number of injuries over the last couple of years, but it's good to see her coming back. I think she's only stepped back on tour over the last couple of weeks. Potentially Grass is her first. I'm not sure if she did play the clay court season, but seeing Tomljanovic back at this level is really exciting, but it's also not surprising. We know what she's capable of. She is an Aussie. She's been around for some time now. So for those who are not familiar, I am based in Australia. And so we know that we do have some players they do have the toolkit essentially to achieve these strong results. All right, Fernandez over Gulbik in 3 sets. Really good win for her. Kokureto, solid win over Stevens in the round of 16. 4-2. Definitely a mover to keep an eye on. And we have been, all right, Dolhide and Mertens, 6-3, 3-love, Mertens retired. Then we had Krejcikova, good win over Dart, 3-4. Schneider over Buskova, the 8th seed, 7-6, 6-3. Now remember, Schneider is on the radar. She's been one to watch this season. She has, I want to say, steadily progressing, I think, without the noise around her, which is really good. Kalinina then fell to Putintseva, 3-0 in the round of 16. Quarterfinals, Fernandez fell to Tomljanovic. This was a really good win for Tomljanovic. I think a really good test as well. It was 1-6, 6-3, 6-2. Putintseva over Dolhide, 3 sets. Krejcikova fell to Potapova. Really good win there for Potapova, 1-4. Kokureto over Schneider. Really good win for Kokureto, 5-7, 6-4, 6-2. Now I think Schneider has been progressing more so than Kokureto, but Kokureto is on her heels. These are 2 players who I think have been underrated. They're yet to crack into, say, the top 30 to have really, I think, noteworthy results. Schneider already has that title this season, her maiden title, so she's on the move. And I'd argue that Kokureto is very close to, I think, snagging her maiden title, and I'm not going to be surprised if within the next, say, 6 months, I'll give her until the beginning of next season, if she cracks into, say, the top 40, top 30, and Schneider as well. I'm not going to be surprised if the 2 of them begin the next season inside the top 30 if they're able to maintain their level of play And obviously, I think their performance continues to correspond with the data and those key progressions. Okay, semi-final time, Tomljanovic, Potapova, 7-6, 6-4. Kokureto did fall to Putintseva in the semi-final, 2-2. We know the result. Really good performance from Putintseva, 6-1, 7-6. That tie break, though, Tomljanovic did come back. That was a 10-8. Putintseva, I think, was just able to edge around. I'm going to say, obviously, Putintseva had a really good start. Tomljanovic took her a while to get, I think, in the group, but still a really good performance from both players. All right, that wraps up Birmingham for this week. Let's head on over to the ecotrans Open. So that was based in Berlin. All right, big draw here, really good performances. So we're going to start round of 32. Siniakova over Navarro. That's a very big scalp. Navarro's top 20, 4-3. Vondrasova over Masarova, 4-3. Really good to see Vondrasova performing well on grass. We know she's the defending Wimbledon champion. Hibino fell to Kalinskaya, 3 sets, but that was 2-6, 6-4, 6-2. We know the end result, so this was a really big test in the first round. Kostyuk fell to Kasatkina, and I think we touched on this briefly last week. 3 sets for Kasatkina. Really good win for her. Obviously, Kasatkina is ahead of Kostyuk in the rankings. However, Kostyuk has had a stellar season. All right, Somnes over Rus in 3 sets. All right, okay. Finishing up the round of 32, we had Jabeur over Wang. Good win for Jabeur again. We know how well she's been able to perform on grass. 4-7-6. Sakari fell to Azarenka. Now, look, we know Azarenka, irrespective of her ranking, is capable of these wins and I guess achieving these wins against top 10 players. We know Sakari has been bumped out of the top 10 this year. She's cracked back in the top 10, become a barrier breaker. Her performance has been up there. She did lose first round, I believe it was, at the French Open. So that was a little bit lackluster from that perspective. Azarenka has been steady. She has been tracking from that perspective. 6-4, 6-2, really good win. All right, Kudermetova over Samson over 3 sets, round 32 still. Noskova over Kerber. Really good win, 3 sets, 7-6, 2-6, 6-4. Now, remember, for those of you who may have forgotten or maybe you weren't around, is that Kerber has won Wimbledon. She's won a number of slams, so she has them to her name. And I believe it was the Australian Open that she won against Serena Williams. So for her to win, I think, her Grand Slams, she essentially had to win it against the best in the world. But Noskova, again, similar to Paolini and Kalinskaya, they had their landmark moves at this year's Australian Open. Same with Kostyuk, same with Yastremska. So it's really good to see her tracking again. So this is not surprising. She has been on the radar, a little bit quiet in contrast to the other 3. But I think she's starting to make some really good inroads here, which is great to see. All right, Haddad Maia fell to Alexandrova in 2 sets. Vekic over Naiminer, 3 sets. And Osaka fell to Zheng. A little bit surprising, 3 sets. Okay, Zheng is, however, top 10. She has not been living up to her top 10 standards. And we've had previous episodes that dived into that. I've also written a number of articles about that over, I want to say, the last 2 to 3 months around the top 10, that 50% differential, etc. If you're curious, head on over to AM8 International and our blogs there. Osaka has been tracking. We know what happened at the French Open, how far she pushed Swiatek, how close they came. I believe this is, however, Osaka's first tournament back on grass. So when we put that into perspective, it's not that surprising, but it really, I think, shows a bit of a pivot there for Zheng, that she was able to transition. However, we know how the results unfolded, but it's still a really good win for Zheng. Let's say a good start for Osaka, given it was 3. It was 6-4, 3-6, 6-3. Okay, other matches, I think, to wrap up. Well, no, we're over to the round of 16 now, and we had Siniakova over Zheng, 4-4. So we've just touched on Zheng, Osaka, how well Zheng played, and Osaka came really close, 3 sets, and then round of 16, Zheng fell. This really does correlate, and I cannot stress this enough. This correlates with the data. It correlates with all the articles I've been writing. You can see how passionate I am about this, is that some top 10 players, irrespective of their rankings this season, this does not normally happen. It is a huge anomaly that has been unfolding this season, is that 50% of players inside the top 10 on both tours do not correlate with their ranking, which means there is huge room for players to push them out. Paolini is one. We know what happened at the French. We know she's now inside the top 10 as she's deserving to be. She has been tracking all this season, really good season. Zheng, yes, she made the Australian Open final. Yes, a stellar start to the season, but then she dropped off. It's a very big difference if you achieve and then you're still able to make inroads along the way. Doesn't mean you have to make the finals again, but still maintain a relative baseline, that round of 16, quarterfinal, semi-final appearances, rather than that full drop, especially when looking at players ranked significantly below you. So this really, I think, underscores that, but still a really good win for Siniakova. Don't want to take anything away from her. Azarenka over Somnes 3-3, really good win for round of 16. Round of 16 is continuing. Kazatkina fell to Sabalenka. This obviously is Sabalenka did get a bye first round, so good to see her back in action, 1-4. Noskova fell to Jabeur, but 3 sets round of 16. 6-7, 6-3, 6-4. Pegula over Vekic, straight sets. Gauff over Alexandrova, straight sets. Vondrasova, Kalinskaya, 5-all, then Vondrasova retired. So many retirements. We'll touch on that later. Rybakina over Kudermetova, round of 16, straight sets. All right, quarterfinals. Pegula over Siniakova, 3 sets. Huge, I think, performance from Siniakova to push Pegula to 3 solid sets, 7-6, 3-6, 6-3. Azarenka over Rybakina, 3-1. Rybakina retired. We've seen a lot of retirements, I think, lately on Rybakina's health. And I would argue that it's something her team really needs to better dissect, because you cannot have a play at the absolute elite level of play inside the top 10 and continue to retire. Something is not 100%, something's not quite right, whether it is in her training, her schedule, how things have been unfolding. If Rybakina has been doing too much too soon, and her system has not recovered, and she needs to essentially take that 2 to 3 months off away from the tour to essentially regroup. I don't think it's really good for the tour when you have a number of retirements at that level. It's more about, I think, self-care. We've got blogs and episodes about that now. Probably in the first, I think, initial 20 episodes, but that's really important. And that goes to a number of other players. All right, we've got the other side of the quarterfinals here. We had Gauff over Jabeur, 7-6, and that was 11-9 in the tiebreak, and then Jabeur retired. Really disheartening again to have that retirement. And another retirement here, quarterfinals, Kalinskaya over Sabalenka. Kalinskaya was leading 5-1, Sabalenka retired. Would have loved to see the set close out. I don't know why players just don't let that extra game unfold to give, I think, the respect, courtesy of their opponent, just to snag that first set. It's not the first time we've seen that, but it's the same with a number of other players. Elise Jabeur obviously finished out that first set, but that 3 retirements from Rybakina, Sabalenka and Jabeur, not good. And all, I think, those 3 players are based in the top 10. And that really goes to show something that it's not ideal. All right, semi-final stage, Pegula and Gauff. This was tight, really exciting. I think this is probably Pegula's best performance against Gauff this season anyway. 7-5, 7-6, and that was actually 7-2. Really good performance again from Pegula. And the other semi-final was Azarenka, Kalinskaya. The best I think I've seen Kalinskaya play since the Australian Open. 6-1, 6-7, 6-1. Huge, I think, second set from Azarenka, but she wasn't able to maintain that level of play. Really solid. We know the result here, how well Pegula play, but check out this scoreline. 6-7, 6-4, 7-6. That tiebreak in the first set was 7-love. Then Pegula picked her game up 6-4 and then 7-6. That was 7-3. However, Pegula's one of those players that inside the top 10, her results were not correlating with that ranking. This is correlating with her ranking. I would have loved to see a more cleaner, I think, event. But Pegula did not play the French. She's been sidelined a little bit. She did take that time away, which is really important, the sensible thing to do. And I wish that Jabeur, Sabalenka, Rybakina, all those players retiring, if they've been pushing themselves too much, that's what periodization is about. That's your team is at fault there for not managing that load. This should not be happening at this level of play. There is an art, there's a science to it, and you need to really respect that. All right, that wraps up Berlin, the ecotrans Open. Let's have a quick look at the Veneto Open. I went in Italy, but it's only, I think, the smaller event, though I wanted to pay attention to the semi-finals, and then we'll look at the finals because we have a maiden title win here. All right, semi-finals here. Pera Irani, 4-6, 7-5, 6-3, and Parks over Bendecci, 6-3, 1-6, 6-3. And the finals of the Veneto Open, we had Pera, the 8th seed, and Parks, and Alicia Parks, 6-3, 6-1 for her title. Go back to the Australian Open this season and Alicia Parks' level of play, and I wrote an article on that. It's accessible, free on AM8 International, that really pinpointed Parks' capacity to potentially perform and progress in the rankings. So again, I love it when the data's right. This is something that is probably more underrated because of her ranking outside the top 100, but definitely Parks has the potential to track. She has some weapons in her game. She obviously needs to work on that level of consistency, that level of application. And this, I think, is a really good result that pinpoints that it's starting to come together with this title. All right, 2 events that are underway this week, big events. We've got Bad Homburg and also this week Eastbourne. So let's dive into Bad Homburg. There's only a couple of matches that we can touch on. Now, I believe also it was, I believe it is Eastbourne. I'm just double checking here. Yes, whereas Rybakina did retire. Kenin, however, did go through qualifying, but it looks like she's been given that lucky loser spot. Definitely deserving, because I did look at the qualifying draw and Kenin lost in the qualifying. But because Rybakina has withdrawn again, which is great for that time away. It's even better, I think, for Kenin, who gets that bye, and she will obviously get those additional points there from progressing essentially to the round of 16, courtesy, I think, of that bye as that lucky loser. All right, we'll dive into Eastbourne before we go to Bad Homburg then, because I've already started to get carried away with what's been unfolding. So we've got Kenin and Dart will play off in the round of 16, courtesy of Dart getting a good win over Buskova, 3 sets. All right, there's only a couple here because it only started yesterday. Fernandez over Krejcikova, really good win again, round of 32, 6-2, 3-6, 6-2. Okay, Keys is the 4th seed here by first round. Kalaninas, Hostaya, 3-2. Makova, I believe this is Makova's first tournament back since her wrist surgery. I believe it was this year, unless it was late last year. Makova was top 10. She was holding on to that ranking inside the top 10. I believe she was the finalist of the French Open last year, and she was sustaining, I guess, those points without the performance. So she was overdue to be pushed outside the top 10, which obviously has happened. But it'll be very interesting to see her level of play on her way back on tour. So we will touch on this once I think that match is completed. All right, Lynette, really good win over Pavlyuchenkova, 3 sets, 1-6, 7-6, 6-4. Ostapenko, good win over Minin, 7-6, 6-1. We touched on she lost earlier last week, and also I think earlier than anticipated at the French as well. Paolini's in action this week, so that'll be great. We had 1 over Potapova, 3, and then it was 6-all in the second set, and Potapova retired. That's a really big shame. Again, goes on what I've just touched on. I really don't understand why. If you're able to get to 6-all, why not play that tiebreaker out? Why not give your opponent the win opposed to that retirement? That's something of the likes of, say, a Federer would not do. Nadal, I think very rarely, unless he was really injured, and I think I'd love to see that more so on tour, that by all accounts, if there's a severe injury, of course, you understand that, but if it's from just not feeling 100% and you're already able to, I think, get to 6-all or a similar scoreline, give your opponent the courtesy of that win. All right, Stevens and Raducanu are going to face off in the first round. And interesting, Pegula's the second seed here, and she will play the winner of that. So I think that's going to be really interesting. I'm going to favor potentially Raducanu over Stevens. You don't know, it could go either way, because it'd be really interesting to, I think, gauge Raducanu's level of performance against Pegula, given that she did win her maiden title last week. And it was not a maiden title, but it was Pegula's first title on grass and at the 500 level, which is really interesting considering she's number 5 in the world. Has been there for some time now. But again, we know Pegula has not progressed to, say, the semi-final stage of a Grand Slam. And also why I think I've underscored that is not top 10, but there's a very big argument there that the likes, or similar could be said for, say, Sakari and some other players that we'll shortly touch on. All right, that wraps up talking about Eastbourne, because it's still underway actively with some really good matches to come, and we will wrap that up come, I think, well, we'll see as before Wimbledon starts or in conjunction with those first days. Last tournament to touch on is Bad Homburg, which from, I think, English speaking background, I thought this was potentially a misspelling, but that's just, that's my naivety there, not understanding that. But Bad Homburg, again, based in Germany, we've got Sakari here as the number 1 seed, round of 32. Only a couple of matches have unfolded. Samsonova is the 2nd seed. We do have a lot of, I think, top players taking the week off, given that Wimbledon's merely just a couple of days away now. All right, Sakari fell to Naimana first round, which is not really a good sign. 2-6, 6-2, 7-6. Sure, 7-4 in the 3rd set. However, Sakari really was favoured. She's the number 1 seed. So to fall, I think, that early it's surprising, but again, it's starting to correlate again with that 50% where Sakari was included, then wasn't, then was. And this really does include Sakari now. With that, we need to see that level of maintenance if you're a top 10 player. Badosa, really good win over Rus, 4-1. This is going to help her ranking. All right, Kerber, she fell to Schneider, 7-5, 6-3. Again, you heard me touch on the results of Schneider to Cocchiaretto a short time ago, so this is not surprising. Would, again, love to see Kerber perform, because we also know she's got Wimbledon under her belt. And grass, obviously, that is a really good surface she can perform on. All right, Yastremska, a good win over Ondreeva in 3 sets, 4-6, 6-4, 6-3. Navarro, she's been back in action, a good win over Christian, 3-1. We've got Svitolina and Wozniacki. Their match has been put on hold, so delayed. Wozniacki surprisingly got that first set, 6-3. Svitolina came back, second set, 7-6, 7-4. And Svitolina's leading 2-1. Svitolina is definitely the favorite. She's top 20. Wozniacki's still ranked, I think, outside around 113. I think we'll shortly review that. So that's a little bit surprising. Would love to see obviously Svitolina track and progress, I think, deep this event. Townsend fell to Noskova 7-5-6-1. Noskova, she keeps tracking really good. Tomova over Maria 1-3. Andreescu, now we touched on Andreescu's performance, I think, last week. I think she made the finals, really good. I think that was her first event back, but here we are. And she has fallen first round, 4-2 to Blinkova. Not that surprising given her ranking and her time away from the tour. It was an extended time away, but given the week that she had, she's probably still recovering from that, in all fairness. All right, Haddad Mayer is the 4th seed, 1-7-6 over Hurkacz. Alexandrova over Podoroska, 3-0. Vekic over Bronzetti, 3-4. Siniakova over Boral in 3 sets. And then we've got Samsonova over Torres Tormo, 3-1. So that wraps up the first round. We've still got, I think, that one against Svitolina and Wozniacki underway. All right, let's wrap up the WTA Tour and look at these rankings. All right, let's start outside the top 100. 3 primary players to touch on. Badosa is up to 113, so 2-point progression. Wozniacki at 112, 2-point progression, and Osaka at 111, a 2-point progression. It's really interesting because obviously Osaka's come back on tour same time as Wozniacki. That said, Osaka's ranking really blew out. It's a little bit surprising to see, I think, Wozniacki within this ranking range. Same with Badosa. She's been tracking as well this season. Wozniacki hasn't been tracking this season, despite, I think, coming out of retirement. Her level of play is not there. She definitely deserves to be ranked outside the top 10, whereas Badosa and Osaka definitely deserve to be ranked inside the top 80, potentially top 60 in all fairness. So I'm really looking to see their results track forwards, Osaka and Badosa, because their level of play is correlated with top 70, if not top 50 even. And I know I'm changing in between, but in reality, we've seen Badosa push Sabalenka almost get those wins. We've seen Osaka almost get that win against Swiatek. We've not seen that level of play from Wozniacki in comparison. And we've also seen both Badosa and Osaka tracking in events. We have not seen that from Wozniacki, just to put that in perspective. All right, let's really focus on the top 100 and move to 1. Timofeeva, she starts at 100. Andreeva's back 2 to 99. 3-point progression at 97 is Masarova. Pera is up 9 points, has cracked into the top 100 at 94, the 29-year-old from the States. Bonda has also cracked into the top 100, 13-point progression. She's at 93, 27-year-old from Hungary. Bencic, she's sidelined. We know that. She was top 10. She was comfortably inside the top 20, taking time away from tour. But ironically, I don't know how, a 2-point progression, even though she's not active, but she's at 90. All right, Kruger has taken a 17-point progression to 87 in the world, 20-year-old from the States. Irani, 7-point progression to 84. Evanesian is a 7-point regression to 81. Townsend is at 79, 3-point progression. Same with Osorio, Shmidlova, Sheriff, and Korpash, respectively. Korpash, though, is a 2-point progression at 75. I'm looking for some bigger movers here. We've got Gulbik as a 9-point progression. She's at 69. Blinkova is a 6-point regression, 66. Bronzetti is a 3-point progression, 64. Podoroska is a 1-point regression. She's sitting at 65. All right, Zhu is at 60, 6-point regression. Stearns is 3-point progression. Tomova is a 5-point progression at 58. All right, Dolheit has had a 9-point progression. She's at 52, 25-year-old from the States. Interestingly, Zheng gets a lot of, I think, fanfare. She's 21 years of age from China. We've got Wang here at 51, 23 years of age from China. So another interesting, really, I think, Chinese player inside almost, say, the top 50. All right, we've got Vekic. She has slid 10 points. She is at 49. Stevens, 3-point progression, 45. Kalinina, 3-point progression, 44. Pliskova, holding steady at 42. Kokureto, 3-point progression at 41. All right, Potapova's back 3 at 39. Boskova steady at 37. Kudermetova is back 1 at 36. Makova, how we've just touched on her results coming back into play. She's back 1. I'm not sure how. Obviously, players progressing ahead of her, but she is at 35. It'll be very interesting to see how that unfolds over the coming weeks with her back in action. Mertens is just back 1. She's at 33. Bulter is back 1, 32. It's a little bit surprising. Katie definitely deserves to be ranked inside the top 30. Given her title only less than a fortnight ago, but for some reason she has been pushed back, but she definitely deserves to be, I want to say around inside the top 30, probably sitting firmly at 25. Krejcikova is at 31. She's got a 6-point regression there. Fernandez is up 3, top 30. Remember, Fernandez is a Grand Slam finalist. In contrast to Raducanu, she's been able to maintain her ranking around this ranking range throughout the best part of the last 2+ seasons. And she's definitely, I think, primed to make her move. If Layla does not make that move, I think in the next or inside this season, she could potentially be susceptible to regressing. That said, she's only 21 years of age, so I am expecting her to hover and then progressively make those inroads again. All right, Yastremska's back 1, 28. Siniakova's up 3, 27. Noskova's up 2 to 26. Remember, touched on Noskova earlier from her, I think, gains at the Australian Open and how she's starting to track. 19 years of age from Czechoslovakia. All right, Ondreeva, she's back 1. 24. This is going to be really interesting, I think, heading into Wimbledon. I'm hoping Ondreeva maintains, say, top 30, tracks back slightly, hits a plateau. And we've touched on that in previous episodes, why that's going to be good for her performance, given that she's only 17 years of age. Garcia is 23. She's back 1. Alexandrova, she's back to 22 in the world. Svitolina, she's 21. That said, Svitolina is definitely top 20. Haddad Maia is back 2, so she's sitting at 20. Navarra is back 2 at 19. Kostuk's back 2 at 18. Why? Because we've had Kalinskaya push up 7, given her finalist result inside the week. So she's at a career high now at 17 in the world. Really impressing. That's great. Same with Azarenka. She's back up at 16. 3-point progression. Perfect timing, I think, for Wimbledon. Hopefully that favors her inside the top 16 rankings to allow her to ideally get to the round of 16 to push her ranking further. But we all know Grand Slam play, anything can happen, but hopefully these seeds really do help and nudge these players further. Samson over 15, Kasatkina 14. Ostapenko has been bumped to 13. Even though that's not in the past week, the rankings are not suggesting that. We know Ostapenko was top 10. She was a barrier breaker this season, but she has slipped just outside. So there is roughly around 800 points separating Ostapenko from, say, top 10, which is Jabeur. Keys is at 12 and Collins is at 11. Collins was a barrier breaker. She was inside the top 10 prior to the French Open, then got slightly bumped outside. Collins is top 10 capacity, top 10 level of play. Keys is almost up there. Collins is definitely ahead when we're looking at the results this season thus far. All right, so there's around 300 points separating Jabeur and Collins. Jabeur is 10. That said, I'm really looking forward to Collins breaking back into the top 10 and maintaining her hold there. Top 10 hasn't changed over the past week, but we've got players from Jabeur, Sakkari and Zenk. So that's 8, 9, 10 respectively, who are all primed to be bumped outside of the top 10. Paolini, sure, she's only ahead of Zheng by roughly 30 points. But when we're looking at Paolini's level of play, it is way surpassing the likes of, say, Zheng and especially Jabeur currently. Sakkari also. Jabeur's actually ahead of Sakkari recently. Sakkari, however, is having a better season than Jabeur, but it looks like maybe Jabeur's starting to track, maybe, given her results at the French. And we know her performance, obviously, on grass. So it's going to be very interesting for the rankings, I think, in the next couple of weeks. Vondrousova is going to be interesting, of course, if she's able to defend her Wimbledon title. Now, remember, she's only 24 years of age from the Czech Republic. My apologies, because I did say Czechoslovakia earlier. Very old, okay, reference. But Vondrousova, she is still 6 in the world. Has her results, or have her results been, I think, correlated with her ranking? No, not this season, but she has started to show that as well. And she is ahead of the likes of, say, Sakkari and Jabeur in that respect. Paolini is ahead, although of these players at this level so far this season, when we're looking at tracking, Pegula has finally started to align with her ranking. However, one title at the 500 level is not, say, equivalent to Paolini, as a Grand Slam finalist inside this ranking range. And Paolini also, I think it was a 500 or 1,000 that she snatched early this year in Dubai from memory. All right, we do know that. I'm not sure if it was a 500 or an 1,000, but that's really impressive. That's why her result at the French was not shocking. All right, Swiatek, Gauff, Sabalenka, then Rybakina, all top 4, but Rybakina continues to retire. We know Sabalenka's out, has not been tracking. These two at the top, Swiatek, Gauff, they've been in action, they've been tracking, and I'm not going to be surprised if Gauff potentially makes a semi-final, let alone final of Wimbledon. Now, I think historically we know that grass is not Gauff's favoured surface, where she is has performed, say, she's won the US Open, she's been a finalist at the French Open. I would love to see a Gauff progress to the semi-finals, potentially finals at Wimbledon. I think she really does have that capacity. And let's remember that Gauff is only now 20 years of age. I feel like she's growing up before our eyes. And essentially she has been, but this is going to be really interesting, I think, to see. And I think over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see a little bit of a shuffling there. All right. Oh my goodness. That is the WTA Tour wrapped and done. And that has been a lot. Let's head on over now to the ATP Tour. We are going to start with, because we have actually seen some movers this week, really interesting, but we do have, I think, Queens, and then we'll be moving over to Halle, which is really interesting. For some reason, I don't know why, they're terming it the Cinch Championships. Obviously, that's branding wise, but it is obviously historically known as Queens. And some of you may be aware there's been a ranking switch between Djokovic and Alcaraz. Alcaraz has been bumped back to 3, Djokovic to 2. And I think it's because of what has unfolded here in Queens, and obviously Alcaraz being the number 1 seed did not track as expected. All right, so let's dive into it. Alcaraz, first round of 32, 1-5 over Surilundo. Draper, Navoni, Draper with that win, 3-2. Tabilo over Davidovich, Fokina, 3 sets, 7-6, 3-6, 6-1. Okay, Paul over Baez, 4-4. Dimitrov, good win over Manorino, 1-2. Quarter over Kakanakov, that's a really good win. Kakanakov, we know, I think he's still top 20, but he definitely has that capacity, and he has had the capacity previously to go at least round of 16 quarterfinals at the Grand Slam level. 7-5, 7-6, 4 quarter. Quarter was in line, interesting, when we're looking at the data with the likes of, say, Sinner and Alcaraz. We knew Sinner and Alcaraz were tracking. Quarter came through at a similar time. Same with Rune, for example. All 3 of the 4 tracked into the top 20 and eventually the top 10. Rune wasn't so expected because he didn't have the results with him. He did have those key fundamentals initially of the 8 keys, and we did touch on it, the 8 keys, 7 keys, and 8th key. However, which was really interesting, it fell apart. He started losing those keys. However, Alcaraz and Sinner did not. So Alcaraz, Grand Slam. Sinner now, Grand Slam. Tracking with those rankings. Rune regressed. He did not. He lost that grasp on the 8th keys. Korda did not move as quick as Rune, Sinner, Alcaraz. He's been steady around 30 in the world, and now he's starting to track from 30, and we know this week he's finally cracked into the top 20, and there's nothing wrong with that he's taken a little bit longer. In fact, it's more favored when we're looking at baselines, level of maintenance. So just to explain that, he was not forgotten. He's always been in the mix there, and there are a couple of players as they come through that have also been in the mix, but some will track sooner, others will never track, and some are steadily, and they will. All right, back to the round of 32. Rinky Hijikata, that's the Aussie, over TFO, 3 sets. Really good win for Rinky. Also, he qualified 7-5, 4-6, 1 love, which means TFO did retire there as well. Not sure what happened with TFO. Analdi over Humbert. Humbert was the 8th seed, so a really good win for Analdi in 3 sets. 3-6, 6-1, 7-6. Rune fell to Thompson. Really correlates with why his ranking continues to regress. There's more on that. I've written more on that, especially in respect to Rune's coaching team, what's been happening with those changes. However, there have been no changes, I believe, in the last, say, 2 to 3 months now. He's had that team, but obviously they're still, let's say, finding their feet. It's really important, I think, also to highlight Rune's current coach now is Serena Williams' former coach, and it does not correlate with success. Irrespective if you have a coach that has achieved success, really good success with a player, does not essentially mean that coach is going to be able to help that player. Sure, the odds are greater, but if he does not have access to the 8th keys, no. And also noteworthy is that his current coach decided to snag and work with Rune when he was already a top 10 player. His coach was not responsible for Rune cracking into the top 10. Really important to be mindful of that these coaches do not take credit for their player achieving a top 10 ranking. If anything, you want to maintain that and then progress at the Grand Slam level. However, we're yet to see that he's actually been regressing. However, very important to note that a regression when working with a new coach is not necessarily a bad thing. It's really a time of gelling and getting to know one another and what's working. However, Rune's performance has been regressing since then, so it's very interesting to keep an eye on. However, also at the beginning of this season, Rune was noted that he would regress outside the top 10 from the data, and I did share that, and it was correct. So he has, and he's continued to regress because those 7 keys, let alone the 8th key, is not prevalent in his game. Okay, really good win for Thompson. He's an Aussie. We know he performs on grass, irrespective of his ranking. He has had a significant ranking climb, really exciting for him. All right, Murray with a good win over Popper in 3 sets. Raonic, a really good win over Norrie there in 3 sets, 6-7, 6-3, 7-6. And that was 11-9 in the 3rd set. Fritz over Daniel, a qualifier, 3-3. Shelton fell to Mapesh Pericard, also a qualifier, but remember, prior to the French, Mapesh Pericard got on the radar. He either made the finals or won it. I believe in the last episodes I said he won it. Not 100%, so don't take my word for it on that respect. Track back to those episodes. I don't remember every little aspect of the data. That is a point of recall. But 6-3, 7-6 for Mapesh Pericard, that's a sensational win over Shelton. A huge win. We know he's an up-and-comer, so this is not surprising given his performances prior to the French. All right, Harris over Echeverry in 3 sets. Nakashima, really good win over Evans there. It was 4-6, 6-3, and then it looks like Evans did retire in the 3rd. Mazzetti over De Minaur in 3 sets. This was really surprising for a lot of people. Alex was definitely favoured, especially with his quarterfinal run at the French. I'm going to say French took a lot out of Alex, had a huge performance there, big fortnight, even though he did fall at the quarterfinal stage, but that was the deepest Alex had gone at a Grand Slam level. Musetti, let's remember at the French, he took Djokovic to 5 sets. Musetti's been on the radar since roughly the Australian Open, a little bit prior. He's been ranked inside the top 30. He hasn't really had the results to correlate, say, with a top 20 ranking. This result, however, over Alex really is putting Musetti on the radar. Track back to, I think, some of our analytics during the Australian Open, where I wrote a key article on Musetti. Articles were not written, however, this French Open, because that's when we did those live feeds. So I've been mixing it up a bit, with the Australian Open has, I think, some episodes, but also the articles, whereas, and also in all fairness, I was not writing my book. I had just finished a month prior how to develop a top 10 tennis ranking. Something that I am yet to share is that I am in the works of another book. So those articles are not, as I think, free-flowing, but I'm still being available for Beyond Top 10 Tennis and these key data insights, especially weekly and at the Grand Slam level. So really interesting for Musetti to track past de Minaur, but it's not, let's say, astonishing because of his level of play and what we know he really is capable of when we're looking at the data. And you really need to put it down to essentially Musetti had a really good day and de Minaur was not, say, on his A game. All right, round of 16, surprising I think for a lot, is Draper took a win over Alcaraz 7-6, 6-3. And this is what I think underscores why Alcaraz has been bumped to 3 and Djokovic has progressed to 2. There's more on that. However, we know Draper's had a sensational week, absolutely sensational. It's helped his ranking as well. Really exciting, especially being a Brit and with Wimbledon only, I think, again, less than a week away. So this is a really positive, I think, metric for Draper. Alcaraz, maybe not so much, but a similar result happened, ironically, prior to the French, where Alcaraz was not tracking, and then he went on and won the French Open. So I am not going to hold too much, I think, strength to these metrics, purely when it comes to Alcaraz, because we know what the patterns of play and the patterns of the data and how Alcaraz has been performing. So it's definitely noteworthy, and sure, it definitely puts a little bit of a wrinkle for his performance at Wimbledon. But we know a similar thing happened prior to the French, and that's really important to be mindful of. All right, Paul over Tabilo in the round of 16, 3 and 4. Quarter, really good win over Dimitrov. We know Dimitrov has performed historically well on grass. So again, really good win for Quarter, 3 sets, 6-4, 3-6, 7-5. Rinky had a really good win over Analdi, and it's really helped his ranking, 7-6, 7-6, and he's a qualifier. And that's why we're seeing Hurkacz, I think, at an absolute rankings high. When we track on over to the rankings shortly, a really good win for him. Thompson over Murray. Murray did withdraw though, 4-1. Thompson was up in the first set. Would have been pretty impressive and exciting for Thompson to be on the grass with Murray nonetheless. But Thompson's had a really stellar week as well. Raonic did fall to Fritz 7-6, 6-4. I think that's a really impressive win for Fritz. Given how we know Raonic performs on grass, I believe Raonic really made his arrival on the grass when he beat Federer at Wimbledon a number of years ago now, but I believe that was the case, and we really saw that. A little do a lot of people know is that before Raonic came onto the scene, he was playing the Brisbane International, and this has to be roughly around, I think, 10 years ago, going back probably almost 12 years ago. I was there in person. I thought, who is this player? I watched his metrics. I watched his level of play. He was pinpointed, yes, from, I think, my background, everything I've been able to share. And then, again, For those who are not aware, track on over to AM8 International, click on Dr. B. Essentially, it was the platform for all of my work because I knew there and then that Raonic, how he was playing, was going to be a top 10 player. That's how exciting the data is, and why through, I think, being able to analyze players at this level and use the predictive analytics, that we knew that this was really going to happen. And why, I think, because this was before, I think, my book started to be published and I started to pen them, to make it accessible to each and every one of you. If you're serious about tracking for the players towards a top 10 tennis ranking, or you have a place, you're a coach and you want to know how to get them there. Really exciting, important. Okay. Mahesh Parikar, he fell to Harris. Again, round of 16 now. 4-7-5. Not to worry, because he got a really good win in the first round. Mazzetti over Nakashima in 3 sets. All right, that takes us now to the quarterfinals. Really impressive here. We had Draper, he fell to Paul, unfortunately, but that was 3 really good sets. 6-3, 5-7, 6-4. Quarter, really good win over Rinky. 6-7, 6-3, 6-4. Rinky should be really proud of himself to make the quarterfinals of Queens. That's incredible. That's a huge win. Quarter, great win for him. Thompson, huge win over Fritz. Great to see 2 Aussies in the quarterfinals of Queens, let alone Thompson to progress to the semifinals. That's incredible. Really exciting stuff. Fritz, unfortunately, because he did not progress further and Paul did, they've had a switch in the rankings nonetheless. And Paul now is the #1 American tennis player, in contrast to Fritz there. Quarter is shortly behind there, but Shelton's in between. All right, Mazzetti, good win over Harris, 6-3, 7-5. Right, that wraps up the quarterfinals. Semifinals, we had Paul over Quarter, 6-4, 7-6. Huge, okay, and Mazzetti over Thompson, 6-3, 3-6, 6-3. Thompson should be really proud of himself. That's a really exciting result, really tight. All right, and we know the result. Paul over Mazzetti, 6-1, 7-6. That tiebreak, 10-8. It was a little bit too late, I guess, for Mazzetti to come back. Needless to say, if it went to 3 sets, that would have been really interesting. All right. Queens, that is done. Let's head on over to Halle. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think there's a different pronunciations there. All right, let's kick into a round of 32. Sinner was the #1 seed here, and he lived up to those expectations. In contrast, really interesting in comparison to Hurkacz, okay, at Queens. All right, first round of 32, here we go, at Halle. Sinner over Greekensborg, 3 sets. Whew, 6-7, 6-3, 6-2. And Sinner lost that 10-8, that tiebreak in the first set. It's a little bit brutal there. All right, Marizan over Sorflin, 3 sets. Struff over Daderi in 3 sets. That third set, 7-6, and that was 12-10. Very close match between Struff and Daderi. All right, Tsitsipas, good to see him back in action. Really good win over Squire. 2 tiebreaks though. Tsitsipas has been lagging from this perspective. He has been bumped outside the top 10 earlier this season, then cracked back into the top 10. It's been bumped outside, so he's hovering at 11. He is on the brink of becoming a barrier breaker again, but we're really looking at the metrics. I want to see more of him to really solidify his place back inside the top 10. He hasn't been able to keep pace with the likes of, say, Sinner, Alcaraz, Rudd, Hurkacz. He was ahead of Rudd or parallel with Rudd leading into the French, and then Rudd went ahead, Zverev went ahead, and Tsitsipas fell slightly behind. So we're waiting for that level of maintenance to kick back in. Medvedev over Borges, 7-6, 6-4. Zhang over Offner, 3 sets. Eubanks over Martinez, 3 and 4. Bublik over Purcell, who qualified, another Aussie, 7-6, 6-4. Hurkacz over Caboli, 5 and 6. Duckworth over Fonseca, 4 and 4. Berrettini, great to see him back. We know Berrettini has been a finalist, I believe, at Wimbledon a number of seasons ago. We know his ranking has taken a huge hit, but this is really good, I think, as in respect to the points, but we also know how he's been tracking lately as well, which is really positive for Wimbledon. 7-6, 6-2 over Michelson. Garon over Rublev, 4th seed. This is surprising. All right, 6-4, 7-6. We're going to get to the rankings shortly. And I'm going to dive into these key implications. All right, Koper over Ogor, Alyssa May, 4-3. A little bit disappointing there for Felix. All right, Fils over Makak, 4-4. Sonego over Kekmanovic, 7-6, 7-6. All right, and then we've had Zverev with a good win over Otte in 3 sets, 6-7, 6-3, 6-4. Wow. All right, round of 16, we've got a couple of upsets to touch on. We know Rublev, he did bow out early. Sinner over Marazan, 6-4, 6-7, 6-3. Struff. Really good win over Tsitsipas there, 4-4. And Zhang, good win over Medvedev, 6-3, 2-6, 7-6. Really interesting. Rublev out first round, Medvedev and Tsitsipas out second round. Not really good indicators for Wimbledon being, again, less than a week away. However, noteworthy enough to keep an eye on. Right, Eubanks over Bublik in 3 sets. I'm going to say Bublik definitely is favoured to progress to the round of 16 at Wimbledon. This result does not favour, I think, that type of performance. But also, I think you cannot underrate Bublik and his serve on grass. Eubanks had an incredible win here. So Bublik's either going to fall early or he potentially is going to be a dark horse, which is really, I think, interesting to keep in the back of our minds. Hurkacz over Duckworth, 7-6, 6-4. Berrettini did fall to Giron. A little bit surprising here. Giron obviously was favoured, but surprising in respect to Berrettini was favoured because of the grass and because he's been starting to track, but obviously he's come to a little bit of a halt there. 3 sets to Giron. Fils over Koper in straight sets, and Zverev over Sonego, 6-4, 7-6. All right, over to the quarterfinals now. Sinner over Struff, 3 sets. And check this scoreline out, 6-2, 6-7, 7-6. Okay, that second set tiebreak to Struff, that was 7-1. The third set tiebreak, though, to Sinner was 7-3. That was really tight, but well done to Sinner. Zhang over Eubanks in 3 sets. Hurkacz over Giron, 7-6. That was 7-5, 6-4. Zverev, really good win over Fils in 3 sets, but that was 6-7, 6-3, 6-4. Now, this is where it gets really exciting because Sinner over Zhang. Zhang's having a really good, I think, season. He's starting to track, and he is, I think, China's #1 male tennis player. 6-4, 7-6 to Sinner. Hurkacz over Zverev. Now, rankings-wise, Zverev was the 2nd seed, Hurkacz the 5th seed, Hurkacz 7-6, 6-4. I think this has to be Hurkacz's, one of his best results, but he has been maintaining this. He's been able to get some really good results against top 10 players, really show up, and he is now on a rankings high of, I believe, 7 in the world. I thought he maybe was at 7 previously, but Hurkacz also, I believe he's made semi-finals, maybe it was quarterfinals at Wimbledon as well. Hurkacz also, I believe, at Wimbledon made his arrival against Federer as well and got that win, which I think raised those eyebrows, go, who is this player? And he's lived up to those expectations ever since, making his way inside the top 10. And I think he has really been, I think, there, maintaining that ranking. And unlike some other players that we've touched on, he has not been bumped out. Maybe in the beginning, 10, 11, 12, back to 9, 10, but he's been relatively firm there. And when you're looking at the data, Hurkacz has continued to deliver. It's not scattered. There is a really healthy level of maintenance. Hurkacz, I don't think, has those weapons to potentially win Wimbledon. However, I'm not going to be surprised if he makes the finals. And if he does make the finals, I don't think you can write anyone off in the finals. It really depends on their opponent as well. But Hurkacz and how he's been playing this season is definitely, I think, semi-final material come, I think, Wimbledon. Sinner's definitely favoured to progress all the way. Anything can happen. But Dimitrov too, even though he's had an earlier exit. All right, on to the finals here. We've just touched on Sinner, Hurkacz, 7-6, 7-6. But look at the scoreline. 10-8 in the first tiebreak and 7-2 in the second. This was close. 2 tie breaks against Sinner and Hurkacz. Hurkacz is playing, I think, just behind, I would say, Zverev, in all fairness. So really, I think it's going to be quite interesting come Wimbledon. I want to get back to that shortly when we get to the rankings. All right, this week we've got 2 smaller events, so 250s underway, and we'll just touch on the beginning of them. Mallorca, Shelton is the number 1 seed. Rinky's already been in action against Nardi, has got the win in 3 sets. We've got other Aussies in here. Manarino is the 3rd seed, for example. Mitchelton over Borges, straight sets. Offner over Munna in 3. Darderi over Martinez, 5 and 5. Eubanks is in action against Menzik in the first round. Fognini just got a good win over Brower, 7-6, 7-6. Shevchenko over Lestiani, 7-5, 7-6. Tabillo is the 4th seed. Monfils just got a first win over Thiem. They faced off against each other in the first round. That was 6-3, 7-6. So it looks like the French was not Thiem's last tournament. It was his last appearance at the French, and he will wrap up at the end of the season. Carabelis Baena over Carino Busta, 3 sets there, 7-6, 4-6, 7-6. Butusta, a good 6-1, 6-0 over Daniel. Humbert got a bye first round, and he is the 2nd seed. Really good warm-up. Let's see if Shelton, I think, can improve on his performance from last week. And then the last event that touched on for the men's is Eastbourne, that's underway, or the Rothesay International for the men's, where Fritz is the number 1 seed here. And I'm not sure who the 2nd seed is, because it looks like we have had a withdrawal with Broome in as the lucky loser. Now that's very interesting. All right, so we've only had a couple of matches that are underway here. Shang over Echeverry, 3 sets. Vukic over Marazin, 2 and 4. Nishioka and Brody will play against each other in the first round. Garon over Suralunda, who is the 5th seed, 7-6, 7-6. We just touched on Garon, had a really good performance last week. Not as surprising. Davidovich Fokina is the 8th seed. He'll face off against Negro. Purcell over De Jury in 3 sets. Good win for Purcell. Zhang's in action. We've got Nishikori is in action against Navone, the 6th seed in the first round. And the last match is Harris and Fernie, both wild cards, but Harris with the win there, 6-4, 7-6. Wow. Okay, now we can finally track back on over to the rankings and dive a little bit deeper. We're going to start at the top 100 and then we'll progress through to 1. We've got Ugo Carabelli has cracked into the top 100. The Argentinian, 25 years of age, is 100 now in the world. Karatsev is back 2 at 99. Kuzuks is back 8 at 98. However, Kuzuks has been on the radar intermittently this season, so it'll be very interesting to see if he continues to regress or finds that form again. Halfman is back 3 at 95. A lot of movers here. Purcell's up 7. So he's cracked back into the top 100, 94 in the world. Wawrinka, he's steady at 93. Kokkinakis is up 2, so to 92 in the world. Harris is up 4 to 91. Interesting fact, Harris, he's 27-year-old from South Africa. He's actually made the round of 16. I think it was at the Australian Open a few seasons ago. But it just goes to show that even though the round of 16 is a marker for the radar, it doesn't mean players are going to maintain that and progress. Like say Paolini on the women's side to Kalinskaya, to Kostyuk, to Yastremska, to Neskova, and I think there's someone else there as well. Whereas on the men's side as well, and it has historically also happened on the women's side, some progress, others regress, but it's a very good milestone to show or to leverage our predictive analytics. All right, Coric has been around for some time now. He's only 27 years of age still, but he's at 89 in the world. All right, Thiago Monteiro is back 5 to 84. Daniel's up 2 to 83. Huge mover this week is Goffin. Goffin is a former top 10 player. He's 27 places at 82 in the world, 33 years of age. He's really taken a hit in the rankings, I think in the last 2-3 seasons. But remember, Goffin was in it, in the action, inside top 10, top 20, when Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer were all at their peak there. He was there. So it's really good to still see him playing and in action. Okay, Rinky has had a huge move, up 23 places, courtesy, I think, of his results. I think it was at Queen's, so he's up to 75 in the world, and that is his rankings high. Noteworthy, he's only 23 years of age, which is really cool to see. Nardi's back 1 at 63 in the world, Nagar's back 1 at 72. All right, Coper is up 4 to 66. Nakashima is back 1 at 64. Evans is back 2 at 61. Berrettini is up 5 to 60. And Mapesh Pericard, again, 20 years of age, from France, he's up 8 to 59. Shevchenko steady at 58. Offner's back 2, so 54 now in the world. Kaboli steady at 49. Popram's at 147. Giron is up 7 places to 46 in the world. Nori has taken a 5-point regression, 44. Eubanks 2-point progression at 42. Monfils is back 2 at 40. Thompson's up 4 to 39. Macaque's back to 38. Darderi is back 3 to 37. Analdi, again, only 23 years of age, but he's steady at 35. Zhang, and this is what I want to touch on, he has taken a good hit, a good progression here, 9 points, so he's at 33, on the cusp of the top 30, and potentially he will be seeded at Wimbledon if one of the top 30 or one of the top 32 does withdraw. We're yet to see that, so I'm not sure. But very noteworthy. I think Zhang, if he continues his rate of progress, he will be inside the top 30 this season. TFO is back too, so he's at 30 now in the world. Not sure what's happened this season with TFO, because we have seen those, well, a lot of bumps, but he is top 20. He was top 15, so it will be really good to see him back there. But look, Francis is only 26 years of age. He's got plenty of time. Draper is up 2. He's cracked the top 30, 29 in the world. He's only 22 years of age, which is really great, I think, for British tennis. Lecheka, he's back 1, 26. Mazzetti's up 5 now to 25 in the world. Bublik is back 6, 23. Bublik was inside the top 20. But he started the season really good, but he's had a bit of a bump, bit of a regression, I think, the last couple of weeks. But he's still 23 in the world, which is really noteworthy. And I'm still going to stand by what I noted on for round of 16 Wimbledon if he begins to track forwards, which is really important. Kakanakov is up 121. Quarter, huge leap here. He's up 3 points, cracked the top 20 to make it 20 in the world. Really exciting. Okay, Felix is actually up 1 despite his recent results. So he's 17 now in the world. Felix has been a top 10 player. Remember, he's only also 23 years of age, which is really important to note. So I think also with Wimbledon, I'm not going to say it's his favorite surface, but it's going to be really interesting again to see how Ogor Elisame does track, and potentially he will end this season inside the top 15 if he continues his progression, which has been, I think, or it surpasses a couple or a handful of players inside the current top 15. Humbert's at 16, then we've got Rune at 15, Shelton at 14, Fritz back 1 to 13, and Paul's at 1. So they've changed places. He's at 12. And look, way to go, I think, for US tennis, because you've got Paul, Fritz, Shelton, all back-to-back. Quarters just behind there in 20. That's 4, I think, American players inside the top 20. It's really interesting, though, when we compare against, I think, previous years where we've had Americans inside the top 10. But look, they are nudging closer. And Paul 27, Fritz 26, Shelton 21, and Quarters 23. Okay, next up we're at 11, where Tsitsipas, he's really, I think, taken a little bit of a progression, even though the ranking does not suggest that. He's only 5 points shy of Dimitrov, who is sitting at 10, which means as I think the next week unfolds, it's going to be very interesting if these two are going to change places. Behind Tsitsipas is Paul, but there's a 500-point differential there. And ahead of Dimitrov is de Minaur, and that's around 100 points-ish separating the two. So there's going to potentially be some changes. Again, how I've touched on with Wimbledon around the corner. All right, so coming to the top 10, Dimitrov, yes, correlated with top 10. De Minaur, yes, correlating with top 10. Rudd, yes, correlating with top 10. Hurkacz, yes, correlating currently with top 10. Rublev is not. His results currently is not correlating with top 10. Really important. Medvedev, this is hard. Yes, for the most part of the season, good semi-finals, etc. At the moment, not so much. Grass isn't technically, I think, his favoured surface. We know this. It's come from him. That said, I'm not going to be surprised if Medvedev makes the quarterfinals. Potentially, if not, ideally, round of 16 at a very minimum. He always shows up at the Grand Slam level more consistently than not. So, yes, he is. Zverev, you can't write him off given his recent finals performance. Alcaraz, Djokovic, Sinner, which in comparison at the moment to the WTA, there are more players tracking on the ATP Tour inside the top 10 in contrast to the WTA Tour. Interestingly though, this was very even, I think, a few months ago. And because the men's has now seen the arrival back of Dimitrov and de Minaur and Rudd inside the top 10, who did not start the season inside this key ranking range. And Hurkacz has been performing. Medvedev has not been living up to those expectations previously, but I also think it's because Zverev started to, and Alcaraz and Sinner more so. Rublev is just not. So I think he's one of the players, but it's probably, I'll say, 10% here who are not living up to that key expectation. And when I did touch on, say, the WTA Tour, and I will look back on that, well, I'm going to say there's definitely probably between 30 to 40%. Let's say 30% to be more reasonable over the last couple of weeks, taking that into consideration. So there is, let's say, that 20% differential. Okay, that's a lot. That really wraps up the ATP Tour for today. We've touched on the WTA Tour. We've touched on the ATP Tour. We've looked at all of the events that really have unfolded over the past week. And I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to Wimbledon. We know what happened to the French. We know how that unfolded, but I'm not going to share yet key predictive analytics for Wimbledon and those results, but you can probably ascertain or gauge from what I've touched on the top 10 rankings and who's been tracking and who has not been, players that we're really going to favour over others, those that carry a heavier weight than some of the other players that potentially are not necessarily in the mix when you're looking at round of 16, but more so quarterfinal, semi-final stages. Okay, that really wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate you tuning in each and every episode. To grab your copy of How to Develop a Top 10 Tennis Ranking, The Power of the Eighth Key, head on over to AM8 International or head on over to Amazon. Irrespective where you're based in the world, easily accessible and available. The same goes to the 7 keys, all available on AM8 International or again Amazon, and you'll find all of my other books there as well. For any comments or questions, head on over to AM8 International or Topic Thread. That's the social platform built on data privacy that intersects with AM8 International and our subscribers there. To learn more about that and how to subscribe, Again, head on over to AM8 International to interact with Beyond Top 10 Tennis. Head on over, more likely, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube, preferably on AM8 International directly. But we do have a lot of social channels that you will find on AM8 International. But predominantly these days, it's here and where you're accessing it. So please don't be shy and leave those comments, whether you're listening on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, iHeartRadio, or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts. And please do send them through, preferably again on AM8 International, because that's where you'll probably get the quickest reply. And also from myself personally, more often than not, I really do my best. Okay, to read our blogs and to catch up on a lot of those pieces that I have touched on, head on over to AM8 International and look for our blogs tabs, or head on over to Medium. They're all there as well. And also, please feel free to leave comments there on Medium and those posts, and I do take the time to read each and every one of them. For something different, head over to Pink Octopus Books for my fictional release that I touched on earlier. All of that artwork that you will see in there is actually from myself as well. So that's just for a little bit of fun. For something left to field, visit Sprout for some random polls. And of course, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, like, share, and all of the above would be absolutely phenomenal. And all of the links are in the episode notes. For those of you who are interested, we do have scholarships available on AM8 International, as well as options to work with me exclusively to optimize your performance and nudge you closer towards that top 10 tennis ranking. So don't be shy, come and say hi. I do, however, say each and every episode, I'm going to ask if you're familiar with the 8 keys and that you've read especially these two, preferably all 11. These two are your minimum if you're top 20, looking to nudge closer towards not just top 10, but go deeper at the Grand Slam level. Really important there. Okay, on that note, thank you so much for listening. I'm so incredibly grateful and really excited for Wimbledon. I am your host, Dr. Ashley Morgan Berge, and this is Beyond Top 10 Tennis.